since there were some things that are common throughout the community. And of course, then we'll open up for other questions or comments. So our presentation today is going to have a little background about the project, the proposed work that the project includes, and then of course we'll have questions and comment time at the end. So for the background of the work, what we like to do is share with you why we prioritize this project, why we think it needs to be done as soon as possible. And what you're going to see here, this is actually a video that was provided to us from one of our residents. Maybe you're on the call today, just showing what First Street community lives with during some very heavy rain events, and just exactly how much water is there that needs managing. Here's some photos of some similar heavy rain event flooding. And then here's a couple of photos of sunny day flooding. And I like to include those to show that it's not only rainwater, it is sea level. King tides and sea level rise are a real concern for the community. When I show you pictures of water, I'll call your attention to the sky in the background. If the in the South of Fifth neighborhood, I believe the number is about 46 drainage during the high tide times. Some of these wells are actually going artesian, meaning the water's flowing backwards. The water's coming out of the well in this particular location and then running across the property and landing in the street and flooding the stormwater system with groundwater. Obviously, if it's raining, these wells aren't productive, and if they're artesian, they're taking up capacity of the stormwater system, making it very difficult for the stormwater system to manage the rain. So we had this discussion in a presentation. Somebody asked, what did that look like, and could we show it? So we added this in there just for you to see that drainage wells during high tide times are simply not productive. Here's a little bit of the background of the project. The City Commission authorized procurement of engineering services in 2016. In June of 2017, after a standard competitive procurement And then, of course, we'll have questions and comment time at the end. So for the background of the work, what we like to do is share with you why we prioritize this project, why we think it. What you're going to see here, this is actually a video that was provided to us from one of our residents. Maybe you're on the call today, just showing what First Street community lives with during some very heavy rain events, and just exactly how much water is there that needs managing. Here's some photos of some similar heavy rain event flooding. And then here's a couple of photos of sunny day flooding. And I like to include those to show that it's not only rainwater, it is sea level. King tides and sea level rise are a real concern for the community. When I show you pictures of water, I'll call your attention to the sky in the background. If the sky is blue, these are usually pictures we've gone out and taken during high tide times to indicate that this is not rainwater, this is salt water that's in the street. And this is at high tide times now, knowing with sea level rise it's going to continue to be more. This was an addition to our original presentation. This is a couple of photos that I actually took with my cell phone back in 2016, standing in Washington Avenue facing towards the west, of some wells that were artesian. And the reason why this is important is we had a few questions in some previous presentations about why we didn't simply add more drainage wells in the community. In the south of Fifth neighborhood, I believe the number is about 46 drainage wells that already exist in south of Fifth neighborhood. And what happens during the high tide times, some of these wells are actually going artesian, meaning the water's flowing backwards. The water's coming out of the well in this particular location and then running across the property and landing in the street and flooding the stormwater system with groundwater. Obviously, if it's raining, these wells aren't productive, and if they're artesian, they're taking up capacity of the stormwater system, making it very difficult for the stormwater system to manage the rain. So we had this discussion in a presentation. Somebody asked, what did that look like and could we show it? So we added this in there just for you to see that drainage wells during high tide times are simply not productive. Here's a little bit of the background of the project. The City Commission authorized procurement of engineering services in 2016. In June of 2017, after a standard competitive procurement process, the city awarded and then ultimately contracted with an engineering firm consultant, Wade Trim. And Wade Trim had the task to develop the concept plans for the stormwater pipes, road elevation, the street for the pump station. I'll go through that in more detail later in the presentation. And then in January of 2020, there was a request made at our land use committee, our city commission land use, for more public outreach on the typical road design. And so, of course, that's what we'll talk about today too. We went back to the South of Fifth Neighborhood Association, as our land use committee suggested that we do, to get more input on the typical design of the street. So I'll give you a brief overview of the proposed work. Here was the First Street section that we developed. I'll walk you through a few of the important elements of this option versus the second option. This option has a road elevation of 3.7 feet NAVD to mitigate against sea level rise. As it stands, option 2 has that same elevation. I'll show you that at the next design. This option has dedicated bicycle lanes. This option has an improved parking and valet arrangement, and the next design does also. That's not unique to this design. Both designs include a better arrangement for parking at the valet side to make it a little bit safer, making those spaces a little bit longer than typical. This option has a median dividing the direction of travel. The advantages of this option over the next one I'm going to show you as we evaluate it is it has less impact to parking. This particular design saves all the parking places that are there. The disadvantage to this design is there's less green space and sidewalk area. What you'll notice in the next design is we actually have more green space and wider sidewalks. So here's the second option. This is the option that we returned to the community with as we were suggested at Land Use Committee to go to SOFNA with. And we presented this to the South of Fifth Neighborhood Association. And what you'll see is it does have the same 3.7 feet elevation of the roadway to mitigate against sea level rise, identical to option 1. It has a shared bike lanes versus dedicated bike lanes. It has the same improved parking arrangement where those valet parking spots on the commercial side of the road, when you're looking at this cross section, you're actually facing towards the west. So the commercial businesses and restaurants are on the left, the residential's on the right. This valet arrangement is a little safer than the current arrangement in our opinion. You have an undivided roadway, meaning that you're each direction of travel, there's no median between them. The advantage of this design as we evaluated over the first option is you have increased green space. You see a wider space with trees on each side of the road, and you see the sidewalks are wider, prioritizing the pedestrian experience. The disadvantage to this design, as we evaluated, is you do lose parking. There are 24 less parking spaces in option 2 than in option 1. We originally presented option 1 to the Land Use Committee, and at the recommendation to go to SOFNA, we presented both of these options at a meeting there that I presented on, and SOFNA has represented option 2 as being the preferred option of the community by a large margin. Based on that community feedback and input, it is our recommendation to the City Commission that we continue with option 2. A little bit about the actual stormwater system that we would be installing is you see along Alton Road, 84-inch underground stormwater pipe under the road that is there now. The road will remain at its existing elevation. This will all be installed beneath its current elevation. You also have a large diameter stormwater pipe on Washington that runs almost the entire length of Washington Avenue from 5th all the way to South Point. Then on First Street itself, you connect the two pipes. So what you have here is, in essence, a backbone of a major drainage system that can serve the entire South of 5th neighborhood, and that as years go by and further improvements that are needed, this system will be able to take connections from other streets, such as if you start wanting to add drainage at 2nd Street, 3rd Street, 4th Street, all of the underground system from Alton and Washington would be able to handle that capacity. It would all be designed for the entire area of the neighborhood. Our current recommendation is a pump station located near South Point Park. You see where the blue dot is actually in the parking lot that we commonly refer to as the Smith and Walensky parking lot, right where you would turn in. We're proposing that pump station at that location and the outfall going straight out into government cut. I want to show you some alternate locations that we considered for the pump station and outfall. And what you will see, you see 5 blue dots on the screen with an X on them. Each of those are locations that we evaluated to place the pump station and or outfall. And each of those locations had the same challenge, and that was we needed to obtain property rights from either a condo association, or we needed permission from the marina that had our property leased. And in none of those situations were any of those private property rights holders willing to provide easement or other access rights for the stormwater pipe, making each of those locations just undoable. And that is how we ended up at South Point Park. And so the blue dot at the bottom is the location we're recommending finally. And then I'll give you a little bit of a detail on that location. You see the blue pump that's located in the parking lot will all be below the parking lot grade, and meaning you ultimately will not lose any parking spaces there. Now during construction you will. We'll work half of the area at a time, closing a few parking places on one side to work, and then when we open them we'll be closing some on the opposite side. But when the work is complete, no loss in parking. All of that blue area will be below the ground. And of course the outfall that you see in yellow will be below the ground. What you will have above ground is what we've depicted in red. And that is the generator and the electrical control panels that operate the pump station. We're proposing to locate those inside the park in that green area to where we can landscape heavily around it or find some other aesthetically pleasing application to where it's not offensive to anyone. And I have this graphic that we originally designed when we had hoped to locate the pump station at the Triangle property over on Alton. And I left it in the presentation because I wanted you to be able to see some scale as to how big the pump station actually is, or the control panel and generator. And what you can see is with the people in the picture, it gives you an idea of just how large this equipment is. And the reason it's so high off the ground is we're required to locate all of this equipment above the flood stages. And so what you have is a platform that's basically head high and all the equipment on top of it. Now, when we were intending to locate it here, we had a vertical screening that we were proposing to hide it and make it less intrusive on the neighborhood visually. And we were sort of limited to something like this because there wasn't space for much else. As you can see, the pump station kind of consumed all of the area, and to put any heavy landscaping around it would eliminate the space for the walkways and so forth. So this screening is what we had. What we would like to see in South Point Park, since there's a little more space to work with, is a much more refined landscaping plan to hide it, or possibly something else. But this is what we had planned for previously, and just wanted to show it to you just to give you some ideas. Here's some pictures of the location approximately of where that control panel would be. A couple of weekends ago, our city manager, Jimmy Morales, went to the location, and he took these pictures. These 4 photos are his, so we added this to the presentation. In the top left corner marked outfall, this is him standing approximately where that control panel would be and generator, as in the red diagram I showed you, looking towards government cut. That's the direction the outfall would be. And then of course the bottom left corner marked the continuum, was just him looking towards the continuum condominiums from the same location, just to give some concept about what it might look like. And the same thing at the top right for Portofino, and the bottom right, the apogee, is simply our city manager looking in those directions to to familiarize himself with what it might look like from those areas. Now we recognize this is, you know, at his height, at man height, then the pump station is going to be taller than that. And so it's not an exact depiction of what will be there, but we have looked at the top elevation of the pump station, and it's not going to be impactful to a direct line of sight to the water. And we'll talk more about that in a moment as well. So the benefits of the project as we look at them, I won't read each one of these to you. You're welcome to read the screen while I hit the highlights of the whole purpose of this project is a drainage project. And what we accomplish here is we can serve the community with a 10-year storm level of service, and we can mitigate against sea level rise presumably for the next 2 or 3 decades. We also can build this system at the current proposed location for the pump station. The city owns all of the property. It does not need to gain property rights from any private individual or association. All it needs is a commission decision, and we have the authority to build that. And we believe that the outfall at this location going into Government Cut is a more appropriate location for the outfall, as opposed to if we were having to discharge into the marina. There might be possible consequences there. And so we think that's the primary benefits to be concerned about. Now, these are the new slides that we'll touch on before we get into questions and comments tonight. As I shared, we have previously had a number of these presentations. And out of those presentations, some very common topics were discussed, and so here they are. Repeatedly, we heard the question is, you know, will the project impact the view from the balconies? And as I showed you some of those previous pictures, is we don't believe that it will. The height of the pump station will be below even pool decks. And we also heard if the top of the pump station, you know, might be covered or something of that nature. We had not considered it previously. But we took that as a great comment, and we're going to ask our designers to consider that and make some recommendations of maybe put a roof on it, maybe put it inside a building versus landscaping, and just show us some options for the community to maybe pick from. And that's what came from some of the previous meetings. It says, will the top of the project be covered so that the higher balconies don't have that as a view? Well, you know, there will either be the view of the top of the pump station, some very heavy landscaping, or a building looking downward. There would be nothing obstructing the view looking out towards the water. It would not be tall enough for that. A question we heard a few times was about smell. You know, will this pump station cause smells? Well, the pump station itself will not cause smell. If there are odors naturally occurring in the stormwater now, they will continue to be there. And so, because this question has been asked, and it is a very good point, what we intend to do is task the designer with identifying potential smells and identifying potential mitigation techniques for those smells should they be identified. So that was a good point to make, and to make sure we incorporate into our final design. Questions about sound. You know, will the pump station be disruptive? Well, the pump station itself will not be disruptive. It's below ground. The pumps are electric motors, and they're very quiet, and they're deep in the holes. But what you will hear is the control panels have air conditioning units on them. Those air conditioning units have a similar sound to a fan running. We have other pump stations that have these air conditioning units on it. In fact, there is a pump station in South Point Park. It's a little bit smaller than this proposed one, on the end of Washington Avenue, that has those same fans that you could hear. And if you want to see one more exactly the same size as this one, we have a pump station built for the convention center that is very similar to this size and proposed design. We would be happy for anybody to come see and hear those air conditioned units. And we've heard this a lot, and some of the individual board presidents from those associations have asked what can we do to attenuate it. So what we're taking that information and we're going to ask the designers to identify the quietest systems that we can have and the most sound attenuating enclosures that would be possible and reasonable to make sure those sounds aren't disruptive. So we hear that, we recognize that sound is a concern for the community, and so that's how we want to address that and make sure that those sounds are as minimal as possible and not disruptive. The question is, you know, how often will you hear the sounds? Well, what you're hearing, because the pumps only run when it's raining, and the air conditioners running to keep the controls cool. So there could be times when it's not raining in the hot sun that the controls get hot just simply from outside temperatures and sunshine, and the air conditioners could come on. And so you will have sounds in times when it's not raining. When it's extremely hot, the control panels may call for air conditioning. A question on transportation safety is the new street design. Which option 2 is it safe for traffic flow and pedestrian? Absolutely. Both designs that you have have excellent safety measures for them. There's pros and cons to the designs, but we've had these vetted by our own internal expert engineers, and external designers have all looked at these, and we're very comfortable in saying to you there's no transportation safety issues with the option 2 that we're recommending. We had a common question as to why South Point Park and not that landscape triangle that we showed you. Again, as we went through it, that landscape triangle the city does own, and we could have built the pump station there. We were limited by the fact there was nowhere for the discharge from that location that was feasible, just simply making it not a doable site. We looked at school board property, we looked at all kinds of private property through there, and we just couldn't gain those property rights. Questions happened a few times about can the pump station be moved to the 300 Alton project. I'm not on that negotiation team, but I have talked to the members of the administration that are on the negotiation team. That seems to be a rather unrealistic ask. The marina operator is adamantly opposed, and the marina operator currently has a 33-year lease option on the marina, and have indicated to us that, you know, they don't intend to give those property rights. So we think that's likely not realistic. Parking, has there been a daytime analysis? What I can share with you is Saul is in the process. Saul's our parking director of developing a daytime parking analysis that will be ready before our commission is asked to give us our final authorization. It says, can we keep the 24 spaces removed? If we go with option 2 that's been recommended, the 24 spaces will be lost in that option. Will the parking be eliminated at South Point? No, the South Point parking lot that the pump station would be, when it's finished, there'll be no spots eliminated there. It will remain the same. In the process, we've been asked how long will the construction take? It'll take about 2 years, but it'll take about 1 year for the final design. We have concept designs to date, and once the path forward will be, once the commission approves these basic elements that we need to know, which is where the pump station would go and the road design. The other 2 major concepts have already been decided by commission resolution. What level of service for the stormwater system, that's 10 years. What kind of road elevation, that's 3.7 feet. Those are decided. So when we provide those final components of information to our designer, we expect it to take about a year and get a final design, then bid the project out and build it, and take about 2 years to build it for construction time. Question is, can the construction be coordinated with 300 Alton? Well, we certainly plan to coordinate the construction with everything. Part of the design will include an analysis of impacts of other construction projects, other infrastructure projects, to take advantage of anything that can be done together and to avoid having multiple areas of the community disrupted at the same time. That will all be part of the construction analysis. That'll be part of the final design that the contractor would bid on. And then the final point here was, will it affect properties? And to that point, we've added one final slide. And what we want to share with you is, this is the information that our Chief Resiliency Officer, Amy Knowles, managed gathering all of this information. And what you can see is when the question's asked, will investment to reduce flood risk hurt my property values? And the answer's no. You can read each one of those yourself, and you can clearly see that our outside experts and our inside staff have gathered this data and have showed that increase in investment in our infrastructure increases property values. We've seen that repeated in multiple areas in town, and we're confident in telling you that your property values will not be damaged by this. What we are very confident in is anywhere that continues to see flood risk, property values will be hurt in the future. Amy's on the call with us today, and if anybody has specific questions about that in the question and answer session, she may be able to answer them. If not, we'll certainly take the question or comment and get with the whole team and provide you that information. So with that, let's jump on into questions, and I'll turn it back over to Kevin. We'll listen to your comments. We'll take notes of them. We'll make sure they get full consideration. If you have a question that we can answer, we will. If we can't answer, we'll note it, add it to our frequently asked questions list, and have the team develop appropriate answers for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. Perfect. So we're going to go ahead and go into the question and answers session, as Roy alluded to. Just some basic ground rules that we've been following for each of our public meetings. Everyone's going to have 2 minutes to speak. You're going to have Vanessa Vasquez. She's going to be timing you, so you may hear somebody just announce that your time has elapsed after your 2 minutes have concluded. If you are calling into this presentation, please click *9 on your mobile device. And that would raise your hand. If you're participating via the Zoom app, all you have to do is just click the raise your hand feature, and your hand will be raised. I did reset everyone, so if you had your hand up, please raise it at this time so you could be in line. We're going to just go down the order of the callers received. So we're going to go with the first caller, Paula. Hi, Paula. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Paula.
Hi, thanks for taking the call. My name is, I'll talk quickly. I have some comments. My name is Paula K. Friedman. I've been a resident of Portofino Towers since 2006 and enjoyed seeing how the area has developed and emerged as a beautiful blending of architecture, recreational and service enterprises, and creation of award-winning green space. I have several concerns about the proposed location of the pump station at South Point Park, and I will be brief. 1, factual inaccuracies. Listed under the major benefits of alternative number 6 is bullet point number 2, that it doesn't disturb residences. Could not be further from the truth. It's clearly an unsubstantiated assertion. In fact, more than 2,000 residents will be directly affected, and at least twice that number will be indirectly affected. And not only will residents be affected, but tens of thousands of park utilizers will be affected, as well as dozens of restaurants and hotels. Number 2, negative impact on green space. The South Point Park has been a beautiful open green space, and clearly green space was important to the committee in selecting option 2, as you mentioned. It's been a source of pride for Sophie and Miami Beach. Putting a large, noisy, smelly pump in the proposed area makes no sense at all. It would be like building a beautiful museum and putting a trash dump next to it. 3, social justice. Clearly, the report reflects high sensitivity to the marina and the yachts docked there. This is misplacing priorities for at least 2 reasons. 1, residents of the condos utilize their homes 24/7 for up to 12 months a year. Yacht owners are there sporadically and much less time than condo owners. Next, there is an important element of social justice in park utilizers. The park is available to and utilized by people of all social classes, all income levels, all racial and ethnic groups. Perhaps it could be argued that the park is a resource especially for lower income people, adults and children, and to contaminate the area.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you, Paula. So we will take those comments back to our team to evaluate. So we're going to go to the next caller, Mr. Ronald Starkman. Mr. Starkman.
Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, so I want to address two issues. One is the communications that have taken place on this, and the second is the merits of the location in the park. First, my recommendation would be that the commissioners delay a decision on the pump station itself. They can approve other aspects of it. And the reason is that really thousands of residents on South Point Drive have been caught by surprise on this. There has never been a communication from SOFNA saying specifically to everybody, the pump station is moving. I think everybody assumed that since it's been in that triangle for 2 years, that that's where it was going to be, and that the discussions on the First Street project really related to the alternatives in the parking. Also, at least 2 board members on SOFNA have told me that they never really had a board meeting to discuss the pump station to approve it. So I think that we just need to not rush this to get people comfortable. Second, as far as the merits go, clearly it's a premier park. There's going to be issues potentially for odors, and rather than approve this project and have after the fact somebody come in and I try to identify them, we think that first that should be investigated, determined, and that the commissioner should know whether or not there's an odor issue before they approve the project. Also, there'll be potentially noise from the generator when it gets operated and tested on a weekly basis, as well as the maintenance equipment. The generator could be located in other locations. It doesn't have to be right next to the facility, and even better, it could be not a generator at all, but when there are hurricane warnings, have it brought in. And finally, I think the key point here is that it should not be infringing on thousands of visitors to the park and thousands of residents. You should look back at the triangle.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed.
Having the outflow go out to government cut from there.
Thank you, Mr. Starkman. Thank you for your comments, and we will take some of those back to our team, of course. And we do have 20 callers with their hands up. So again, I just want to reiterate, we're going to have 22 callers now. It's going to be 2 minutes per person. So if you may please keep your comments and questions concise, just so we can hope to get through everybody. Tonight we are going to have a hard stop at 8:05. We're going to try to get through as many callers as we can. So I'm going to go to the next caller. Hi, caller, you're live.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is Sharam Zulfagari. So I'm going to be very brief. First, thank you for the presentation, and I share most of the concerns of my neighbors. I think if it would be possible for you guys to be a little bit more specific in terms of, we're talking about noise level. What is the dBm level of that noise level that will be produced when the air conditioning system or the pump will be functioning? So if you could maybe provide us those numbers. And also, I understood that depending on the outside temperature, the temperature will trigger the air conditioning system. What is the temperature, at what temperature that trigger will happen? Because as you know, most of the time, it's a very
it's been hot the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's most of the time hot. So, I mean, does it mean that the air conditioning system would be functioning most of the time? So, if you could provide those two information, one is the triggering temperature for the air conditioning system, and also the exact dBm level for the noise coming from the pump and the air conditioning system. Thank you.
Thank you. So Roy, if you maybe want to address the
Sure.
AC system.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Great questions. What we'll do is we'll ask for an exact decibel level of the equipment as it's rated by the manufacturer. I don't have that with me at this point. I will ask for confirmation on that, get it to Kevin, and we can put that in our frequently asked questions. And if he's got your contact information, we can send that one to you exactly. As far as the temperature on the air conditioner, it's based on the interior temperature of the control cabinet. If there, it is an enclosed cabinet, an airtight cabinet. So typically when we see hot summer days, like we're seeing right now, you have a similar unit at the end of Washington Street now. And so you will notice it will come on in the height of the day, kind of like your air conditioner in your home will. It'll come on, it'll cool the system down, and it'll turn off. You have a pump station now, although it is smaller, at the end of the street. And so the sounds will be somewhat similar, and any odors or any other concerns about what the pump station will produce will be similar to what you have there now with the smaller pump station. And the one thing I failed to mention in the presentation, I apologize, is the way our concept plan is, we see this as an opportunity to eliminate that pump station. So the one you have now in the median at the end of Washington Street, we would take it out and just connect those pipes to the new pump station. And so we would eliminate the smaller one in exchange for the bigger one. But the smells and sounds should be somewhat similar, but I will get you that exact information you requested, and thank you for asking.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. So we're going to go to the next caller, Mr. Bill Johnson. Mr. Johnson? Hello, caller, you're live? So we can't hear you right now, but it looks like you're unmuted. Okay, so I'm gonna, oh yeah, there you go. No, so it seems, just go ahead and check maybe if you're wearing a headset or microphone to see if it's connected. I'm gonna go to the next caller and we'll come back to you. The next person is Nick. Hi, good afternoon, Nick.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, so I was on the board of the Portofino for about 4 years. And first of all, I just found out about this location for the pump station about a week ago. And I've been on that board for 4 years. So I can only imagine that there are hundreds, if not thousands of other people in this community that don't know about this, for starters. Secondly, we had a project over that period of time that involved a $30 million improvement to the Portofino that was aesthetically pleasing, that added aesthetic value, didn't have negative smell potential, didn't have negative aesthetic beauty potential, it added value. And I can tell you that you're dealing with a very sophisticated population of people here. And I noticed in your presentation that you talked about your ability to do this without having to acquire land rights or approvals or whatever, which is a certain way of looking at this. But I'm going to raise an issue for you that you may not have considered, and I did not see on your list, which is you're going to have some major litigation risk with these people, because this community can make itself heard and did make itself heard in the context of the project that we did over the course of that period of time. Even though we had hundreds of meetings with our residents, we had hundreds of communications, we had hundreds of presentations, we had hundreds of experts that came, expert presentations where people came in to communicate to the community before we had a shovel of dirt laid. And this project, and I get that it's, you know, it's adding value in terms of the drainage, but you got a community of people that you haven't dealt with here, and you have a major litigation risk in my view. So I would re-echo Ron's points, Ron Starkman's points, and Allie Herman's
Your
points.
time is up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. And just to mention, over the past 2 weeks, we have met, we did meet with some members from the Portofino Continuum South Point Tower, and we created the scene presentation. In the last 2 weeks, we've also met with different buildings within and stakeholders within the area. And we want to recognize we do have Lauren Fertel, and her name is on the postcard. So if you have any questions, if your board has any question, you could always just email Lauren Fertel, and she'll get that over to us in the team, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you. So we're going to go to the next caller, Jim. Hi, good evening, Jim.
Hi. I am on. I spoke at the last meeting when you had this with the South of Fifth or South Point Drive residents. Mm-hmm. The engineer Roy did not mention 2 or 3 things. One, first, the distance between the generator and the pump. There's no reason the generator has to be in the park next to the pump. You can run wires a long period of time and get that, and there's no reason that generator couldn't be put in the triangle originally. Separately, if you have to go into South Point Park, the engineer was very clear. His preferred choice for the outfall was in the boat basin. And there's no reason if you go into the park, you can't turn it over there and move the pump much closer to the boat basin where it's not affecting 5 or 6 different towers in front of it. And none of that has been considered. So if the only reason we can't do this out other ways is because we can't get land use, we can go through the park a different direction. We can move the pump much closer to the water out over in front of the Il Piaggio or whatever, and right in front of the boat basin. And we can run ground wires from a pump station, from a generator station that is out in the triangle. And it avoids the disruption on Washington Avenue that might occur on parts of it if you run down Washington and then turn right. As I look at the design of the pipes, there's no straight line runs on any of this stuff. And if you hit a pump, and you can easily turn direction and pump it in a different direction. So to switch this thing and move the pump out of the main part of the park over towards the boat basin would be the way to go, and leave the generators some 500 feet, 1,000 feet away over in the triangle, which would avoid the disruption of the noise, the air conditioning, give you plenty of access to it in the triangle. But none of that's been considered because this has been slammed on all of us. None of us heard about it. It came in late. And the commissioner should be embarrassed that this is going on by an engineering staff that tried to railroad the team. Now, I understand Safna gave an opinion, as I understand from our directors, but none of us south of South Point Drive were even aware of it until a week and a half ago.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed.
That's not 2 minutes, so somebody's running a fast time.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and go to Mr. Roy Coley.
Okay, thank you for those comments and questions. I can respond to at least part of it initially. We agree that the generator itself does not have to be located adjacent to the controls. It can be located remotely. It's just a matter of picking a location and the cost associated with running the wires. And we hear you on that. We accept that suggestion as a consideration, and certainly we will ask our designers in final design to give us options and what those options would be. There's pros and cons to everything, so we hear you, and you're right about that. The one thing I would like to point out to you, that when we bring the outfall from the proposed recommended location, we are looking to avoid conflict with a major sewer force main. As most of you that live in the neighborhood probably lived through the project a few years ago where the county run a giant sewer force main right through that same area that runs just to the west of the location that we're proposing. We would not want to come in conflict with that major sewer force main. That is a partial reason why the entire project's final design will be a lengthy one, because we'll be studying all of the underground conflicts. Having an underground utility plan is going to be a very complicated undertaking, because that major sewer line's there, as well as some other utilities, gas lines, electric lines, communication lines. But the biggest obstacle out there is the sewer line. And so where the pump station location is now, we recommend taking the outfall straight out to Government Cut, which is actually where it is today. The outfall for the existing pump station is very close to where we're proposing the new outfall to be. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. So we're going to go to the next first call-in user ending in 1904. If you may just state your name and which property you reside at.
Hi, yes. Yes, my name is Paula Allen. I live at the Courts at South Beach, 100 Meridian Avenue. My unit is on First Street, overlooks First Street. I'm calling to express my concerns about losing 24 of the 39 existing residential parking spaces. First, I'd like to start by saying that I've never heard in Miami Beach that there is an excess of parking. I've never heard in South Beach in particular that we have an excess of parking. What I have heard is, and seen, is people cannot find a place to park, people circling around trying to find a place to park. I've called in on these meetings before. I've expressed my concerns. I've expressed my concerns about the service providers, plumbers, etc., electricians, anyone who provides services to the about 5 condos that surround First Street, that they will have nowhere to park. And I've also stated that me and some neighbors I know have experienced air conditioning techs or plumbers that you leave work in your little 4-hour window they give you, and they call and say, I can't find parking, I'm leaving. So you've like missed a whole day of work, and then you have to reschedule and hope they can find parking to service your broken air conditioner. So those are my first concerns. The biggest concern, however, is that the daytime parking study was not done before option 2 was presented and suggested and promoted. Nighttime only study was done, which is kind of tricky because it shows no use hardly at night. And I found it kind of deceptive that a full daytime study wasn't being done. I would like that after the daytime study is done, well, before, for you to reconsider your recommendation of option 2 and change it back to your original recommendation of option 1. Okay?
Thank you. That's
Those are
2
my
minutes.
concerns. Did she say 2 minutes?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. Yes, but thank you for your comments. And to address your 2 questions about the parking study and the 24 parking spaces, we do have our Director of Parking on the line, Mr. Saul Francis, and also Jose Gonzalez, who's the Director of Transportation. Saul, do you have anything to add to there?
Sure. So first of all, good evening, everyone. When the study there was a study done back in 2018. The consultant that was hired to review the traffic circulation on the street, and it was, from a parking perspective, it was a qualitative analysis in that there was observations on the street, on First Street, for daytime and nighttime, and from what FT described in their study, the parking use was moderate. The fast forward to January of this year, there were some assertions that the parking spaces on the residential side were not utilized by residents of the courts and of residents that are actually on First Street. So we conducted the study under those parameters because that was the specific question that was asked as to what the utilization was. So clearly the residential program is effective 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday and 24 hours a day, Saturdays and Sundays and holidays. These residential spaces are 2-hour maximum parking Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So obviously anyone can park there. So just naturally, the analysis was done, again, to determine the use by residents, permitted residents in the area. And then that analysis, as we know today, came back with an average of 58% utilization, which is also moderate. So that's where that was the genesis of the nighttime survey, and combined with the qualification that FTE provided us in their analysis that the daytime and nighttime, and by the way, they did reviews on a weekday, full weekday, and a weekend day, day and night in their review. And again, they had their results were that it was moderate use. So that's the background on the analysis of parking on First Street.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. So we're going to go to the next caller ending in, what is this, 4500. if you may go ahead and just announce your name and where you stay and which building you reside in. Hello, caller. Can you hear us? Hello, caller. Okay, I'm going to go to the next person, and I'll try to come back to you if you're able to maybe unmute yourself. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next caller, Mr. Frank Del Vecchio. Mr. Del Vecchio, can you hear us?
Yes, 301 Ocean Drive. Am I on?
Yes, sir, you're on.
Okay, I have one observation and 8 questions. Please don't answer them now. Communication is my observation. We have the highest ad valorem tax-paying segment of the city and the highest number of quality restaurants that are visited worldwide. All residents of the city use our parks, beaches. So you're simply going to have to devise a website, Q&As specific to this project that will solve the communication problem. My issues are 8. First, location and design. There is going to be a 6-foot diameter pipe all along Alton Road. 5 to 9 inch diameter pipes on Washington Avenue and First Street. You've only given us the design proposed for First Street. You don't have the design information for the rest. Number 2, what is the schedule? Number 3, what is the sequence? Number 4, what will be the duration of these projects? Number 5, what is the plan for parking and traffic, including where will these supplies be stored? The equipment be mobilized, including construction equipment. Number 6, how many contractors and how many projects? Number 7, operation. Will the entire system have to be in place for it to function, or can it be segmented? Number 8, who is going to manage this? Who is going to coordinate this? This is an entire enterprise, and we are entitled, the city is entitled, the city commission is entitled, and all city departments are entitled to know.
You can go ahead, Frank. I think that was just a 10-second warning. I'm not sure if you were able to ask all your questions yet.
We need to know how the project will be managed and coordinated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Del Vecchio. And thank you for providing, I know you did mention you were going to provide those eight questions, and we probably don't need to answer now, but I think what we can do is we'll include that as sort of an FAQ, and we'll also, following the meeting, provide you with the responses to your questions. We'll also make those available for some of your constituents that are on the call as well. So I'm going to go to the next, I'm going to go back to the caller that's ending in 4500. Hello, caller. Can you hear us now?
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, good. This is Jeff Crippen. I have a residence at the Continuum. And I guess the first comment that I would like to make is if Roy Coley's available, I may hire him as one of our sales team at my company. You know, if you take a look at some of the things that were said during the presentation, and I was also on the July 2nd call, you mentioned that there wouldn't be necessarily noise and the air conditioning unit coming on, except when it's not raining. So I would say that a lot of the times of the year, there's going to be lots of noise. So also, I thought it was an interesting and invalid comparison when he talked about values of properties. He talked about values of properties as compared with doing nothing. That's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is the location of a project that is necessary, not as to whether a project is needed or a project is not. This is not a light switch. It's a matter of where this pump station belongs, and which I'll jump to. I thought Paula did a great job of hitting the areas that I wanted to hit, and that is, yeah, I'm in the Continuum, and you know the people in Portofino are impacted, but this park is enjoyed by thousands and tens of thousands of people that are part of this community, and they're part of the community that have been overlooked, especially during what we've seen over the last month since George Floyd. These are people that are overlooked that are not on this call. And what we're doing is impacting all of those people just as much as we're impacting the condominium owners and the folks with the higher intellect, as Nick stated. And the point that I'm making here is this is the absolute worst choice. And I will say this, oftentimes the seemingly simplest solution is the wrong one. This may be the simplest solution for the city, but it is the wrong one.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Thank you. I'm going to give Mr. Coley an opportunity, I believe, if you want to touch on maybe some of those points.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I did want to clarify one thing and apologize if I wasn't clear when I said it to begin with. The question on the noise was about when would we hear it. Obviously, if the pump station's running, there may be sounds, and what I wanted to be fully transparent on was just to share that even if it's not raining, if you're in the hot time of the day and the control panels get hot, the air conditioner units will be called to come on. So I wasn't intending to say that they only worked when it's not raining. I was really intending to say that sometimes those air conditioners would run when it's not raining for the heat reasons. So I did want to make sure I didn't leave that confused. I apologize. The other thing I wanted to point out, I know Mr. Frank DeVecchio, prior to your comments, asked a number of questions that he didn't ask for responses to tonight. He wanted them in the future. I just wanted to point out that some of those questions, the answers will come from the design process. Now, we can certainly answer some of them going forward with our team, but a lot of times when you're asking some exact details, we have currently only conceptually level design, which does not include a lot of the details of the exact number of folks and the procedures that'll be followed. That'll all come in the detailed design that will come in the future. So some of the questions we can answer immediately, I think, and then some of the questions would have to come after the project design over the course of the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go to the next caller. Hi, caller, you're unmuted.
Yes, hey, hello.
Hi, good evening.
And my name is Josh Morgenstern. I'm at the Portofino Tower. I've been a resident here since 1997. During that time, we've seen a lot of change going on, and I'm not real happy about this one. I'm going to voice my opinion. This whole thing stems at First Street, which is the problem, and you're already planning the whole redesign that street, regardless of the option 1 or 2, what's going on there. But I firmly believe in that city-owned land that you said you already own on the triangle would be the most ideal spot to put this thing. You said you had some output issues. I'd like to hear more about that and why they couldn't be corrected, and this totally redesigning of the street going on already. And that would be, the least, from a aesthetic view and noise view, it's not going to be the least affected of everything, opposed to this is an element we really don't want in the park for obvious reasons that everybody's talking about. And I want to know why you can't. You did that beautiful rendering on the triangle, and it was intended obviously to go there. And I don't know what happened at the last minute here to make it now want to put it in the park, a place that we love and we don't want to see destroyed or misused in a way that's going to take away the whole vibe of the energy of the green space of the park.
Thank you for your comments, sir. And we do have, you did mention the road design of First Street. So we do have Jose Gonzalez from Transportation Department. See if he could comment on those, and Mr. Coley. Go ahead. Play Jose?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. As I understood the question, though, it was in regards to that triangular parcel more for the location of the pump station. Did I interpret the question correctly?
Let me see if the caller. Hi, caller. Can you hear us?
Yes. I think the triangle. You had that rendering already showing the building there, and I think that's the ideal location and solution for the problem that begins on First Street.
I'm happy to respond to the pump station location and let Jose discuss the design of the options of First Street. The triangle location, sir, as you correctly stated, we tried very hard to locate the pump station there. We thought that was a good choice initially, and we spent more than a year on that idea. The city does own the triangle, and the city is able to locate the pump station itself. The challenge that we were unable to overcome is leaving that pump station. We need a very large pipe to leaving that pump station back to the bay. And all of the paths that lead from that triangular site back to the water required some sort of additional property right we didn't have. We looked at going to the marina, and the marina operator has the authority on the property through their existing lease. We met with them multiple times. We met with their leaders out of Dallas, and they just rejected it and said they would not give their consent or give their property rights. We also dealt with individual condominium associations all along the way and discussed perhaps obtaining an easement or some other type of right to run that stormwater pipe through there. And after a year and dozens, literally dozens of meetings through there, we were unable to secure that location, and it made us determine that the triangle-shaped property just wasn't going to be doable, and that's why we ended up at South Point Park. Now, as far as the design of the street on First Street itself, Jose is our expert in traffic, and he can speak to that better than I can for sure.
Sure, and I'll be happy to answer any specific question you may have regarding the design.
Hey, Jose, I think we might have lost you. There you are.
Oh. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right.
Perfect.
So the again, as I understood the question, the resident really didn't. The comment was not so much about the design itself. I'm not sure if there was something about the design or one option versus the other that the resident was particularly interested in hearing.
Okay, so what we'll do is let's go to the next caller, and if there's any questions about specifically the road design, we'll definitely come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to go to Representative Michael Grieco. Hello, Representative Grieco.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello, neighbors. Obviously, I've been a huge advocate of option 2 for First Street, talking about the street design. So I hope Jose is still on the line there. I have a few questions, and I'm hoping that they can be answered this evening. And it's great to have Jose on this call because we haven't had transportation on the call previously. So I have a question. First, I have a question for Jose, then Saul, then Roy. I'm going to just run through all 3 of them now. For Jose, my question is going to be, I know the Transportation Department has endorsed, geez, Jose, that's you, man. Turn your ringer off. The Transportation Department has endorsed option 2, which is the option that is consistent with the Transportation Master Plan. But I'd like for you to explain why, and also go into the fire code requirements that hamstrings the decisions. That's a question for Jose. For Saul, I know that the Parking Department is doing a parking study as we speak. Can you elaborate as to the tragic flaws of doing a parking study right now? And then I have one for Roy with Public Works regarding the project. We have backflow that actually gushes out of the street level parking garage drains in the courts. And I'd like to know whether or not this project is going to correct those issues. So thank you for your time. And I want to thank everybody for participating.
Thank you, sir. So we'll start with Jose if you want to take that first question, and we'll go down the order. Jose, you may be muted. I'll go ahead and ask to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Representative Grieco. So a little bit of background. Every roadway project, even if the focus is on drainage, such as this project, is really filtered through our Transportation Master Plan, right? That's our guiding document in terms of above ground improvements and how a street should look like. So this project is particularly important because it's in the south of Fifth neighborhood. And our master plan actually establishes the south of Fifth area as a pedestrian priority zone. Pedestrian priority zone, as the name implies, is an area that focuses on pedestrianism and makes it very comfortable, very safe for pedestrian activity. The other aspect of this is that our transportation master plan is premised on a modal prioritization strategy that places pedestrians first over every other mode. In fact, even over bicycles and transit. So when we focus on this project on First Street, it has all those ingredients of a pedestrian-oriented project within a pedestrian priority zone. As we look at the two options, the second option, option 2, is between the two, the option that provides more space for the public realm, for the pedestrian, to be specific. It also it consists of more shade and less asphalt, which are all, again, ingredients of a pedestrian first project. And then what it does is also accommodate bikes. So it's that sort of balance between focusing on pedestrians while still accommodating bicycles. To point out, our master plan actually calls for South Point Drive to be that bicycle corridor in the South Fifth area. So those were some of the thoughts, some of the considerations that we took into account, as we endorsed option number 2. And then to the representative's point about the fire code. So that speaks to the amount of asphalt that is required per that National Fire Protection Code on basically a street cross section has to provide enough space for a fire truck to not only pass through, but to also, God forbid, there's a fire along that street, for that fire truck to deploy its riggers, its outriggers, and be able to perform its function. That requires, according to the code, 20 feet of width. And so in the case of option 1 with the median, that would entail having at least 20 feet of asphalt on both sides of the median. When you compare cross-section number 1 with cross-section number 2, you will note that there's a lot more asphalt in that first cross-section than there is in the second cross-section.
Thank you, Jose. So then, sorry, you got cut out for a moment there. So I know the next question was for Saul. Saul, if you maybe want to comment on the parking analysis.
Thank you, Kevin. So I believe what Representative Rico is referring to is obviously we're in the midst of the pandemic. Things are, as far as utilization of parking, as we know, this past weekend the beaches were closed. Restaurants will be closing tomorrow, or dine-in restaurants will be closing tomorrow. So this leads to we have two parking lots in the area, the South Point Park and the Nikki Beach lot. Both parking lots are closed for public use. That's driving utilization throughout the rest of the South Point area. And again, just different, the variables are just changing so quickly, and we're doing the analysis, so no doubt we're going to continue doing the analysis. But the concern is that obviously it's not going, realistic pick utilization of those spaces for years to come. Hopefully when the pandemic is over and so forth, and normalcy returns and the use of the street for parking or not returns, basing it on the survey that we're doing now, or the analysis that we're doing now, raises some question as to what the actual utilization of the street will be in the future in a non-pandemic time.
Thank you. And then Mr. Coley, if you wanted to touch on that last point, we have a few minutes left, so maybe quickly.
Sure. Representative Grieco, thank you for that question. It's a complicated question. It doesn't have a simple yes or no, but I'm going to attempt to provide you context. Your current condition, as you know better than anybody, we've talked about it many times, and we saw the video in our presentation today. When we get those heavy rains and the water has nowhere to go, it just stands, and that contributes to the flooding of your garage area or some of the garage areas in your building. The project, as we envision it and as we will model it in the design, is we will be removing all of the water that today falls within the right-of-way and removing that out of your neighborhood via the pumped system to reduce the overall amount of water in your community. Now, oftentimes, flooding from underneath is coming from groundwater, and what we have learned throughout Miami Beach is that our groundwater elevation is directly connected to the elevation of the tides. And if the water that currently gets in your garage is the rainwater that's running off the streets and in there now, we will be pumping that out and giving you major relief. If you see in the future water coming in that garage that's actually groundwater being pushed up by tides, the system that we put in will not be designed to extract that. Our pipes and pumps are for rainwater, and we elevate the streets to get the streets above the sea level. And so it turns into where is your water exactly coming from, and we would be more than happy to evaluate it further to help identify that if you request us to.
Thank you. So we have about 45 minutes left. I want to try to get us through as many callers as we can. If we anticipate about 4 minutes, including a response, that only puts us at about 10 people. So we're going to go to the next caller. And in the meantime, I'm going to place the postcard on the screen. There's an email at the bottom for Lauren Fertel. If we can't get to your question, please email the team via Lauren's email. We'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. So next caller. Hi, Stefan.
Yes, that's me. Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for the enormous effort that you have made to reach out to us. Roy Coley in particular, who has spent a great deal of time contacting each and every one of us who are concerned and explaining the situation. As many of you know, I was president of SOFNA for 7 years, and I have seen this project very similarly 10 years ago with the force main sewer project that Roy referred to. At that time, the same objections occurred to everybody about South Point Park, and it was going to ruin the park and destroy the park, and it would ruin everybody and make everybody unhappy. And it turned out the park was an excellent choice because it went through the park quickly. It was a minimal impact at the time. It seemed to be bothersome to many people, but it really actually was a very brief project because they had unobstructed ability to have machinery on site and to do the digging they needed to do and be done with the project very quickly and efficiently. And I think we are in the same situation here. I understand that the people in the condos adjacent to that area are deeply concerned. The same concerns existed before. And in fact, those concerns never really materialized to be an impact on their condominiums or on the park. And the park is still a beautiful place and will continue to be so afterwards. And I think that's important. I think it was important to also thank Marie Peters, the current president of SOFNA, who has done a very good job of transparency and outreach, despite the fact that some people feel they were blindsided. There were numerous emails from SOFNA announcing these meetings, announcing the project. Be willing, more than willing to have
10 more seconds.
Participate. And I just would like to thank the city for doing, I think, a superb job of what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. We're going to go ahead and go to the next caller. Hello, Anna?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Anna Shustak, and I am on the board of Portofino Towers and have been living in Portofino Towers for the last 15 years. What I wanted to say is that we waited, my family and I, with great anticipation for South Point Park when it was being built, and it really was beyond anyone's imagination how beautiful it did come out. Consequently, we are absolutely opposed to putting this in South Point Park. Mr. Colley said that he's trying to find something that would be aesthetically pleasing. And my point would be is that it is impossible to find something aesthetically pleasing to cover up something that is 13 to 16 feet high in structure. It's just totally antithetical to enjoying the park. I think it's going to not only affect those of us living in the neighborhood, but all the tourists and visitors who come to our park. So I do disagree with the caller before. I also attended the last presentation where Mr. Colley presented the issue of the pumping station being in the triangle, and I have heard a variety of different reasons of why it can't be there. That night, I think what I heard was that it would not be efficient for the outflow. Today, I hear that it's not feasible at all. I would suggest that it be revisited, and I think that many of the residents in Portofino would agree with me.
Thank you for your comment. So we're going to go ahead and move over to the next caller. Hello. Hello, caller. Joan?
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. I'm Joan DuPonte. I live in the South Point Tower. And South Point Park is really a jewel enjoyed by Miami Beach residents and tourists alike. Have you ever been there on a weekend? It is just a lovely scene with families picnicking, playing soccer with their little kids, right where you propose to put your structure, right near the brand new water park that Miami Beach just built. The park is really an asset for Miami Beach, and it is diverse and democratic. I do not feel that finally, I just heard about this iteration on July 2nd, and I feel strongly that there should be detailed studies for the best solution, not a fallback position to a site that was considered very early in the process. I don't feel that there has been adequate due diligence about odors from underground vegetation, which were absolutely terrible on Washington Avenue and about 3rd Street, noise levels, and it's not just when the generator or air conditioning runs, but my understanding is that the pumps require maintenance on a daily basis, and contaminants flowing out where folks sit and actually wade in the water. I guess I'm going to appeal to the golden rule, do no harm. You're trying to fix flooding, so don't harm Miami Beach's most beautiful family park. Don't create odors and noise in a park you have just redone. Put the generator hopefully the line on a road where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And I'm going to call on Mr. Roy Coley to maybe clarify. There might be some confusion on the location of the pump. Roy, if you may clarify where it is.
Thank you very much for those comments. I'll just clarify a couple of things just in case I misunderstood what you said. I think you made reference that a pump station being in the middle of the park, and what I just wanted to point out was we're recommending in our proposal the pump station would actually be located in the parking lot, and then the only thing that would be in the park would be control panels, but not the pump station. So all of the maintenance activities that would take place in the future would be in that parking lot and not disrupting the park. And as far as the outflow going out at that location, it's currently the location where the pump station in South Point pumps to now. The other comment you made, obviously we respect your opinion and that you don't support it, but I just wanted to make certain that everyone knew we weren't looking at actually putting the pumps out in the middle of the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. So we're going to go to the next caller, John Fanning. Mr. Fanning. I'm going to request to unmute. So you just need to unmute yourself, Mr. John Fanning.
Yes, I'm on.
There you are. Hi, yes. Good evening. We can hear you.
First, I urge the commissioners, who I understand are going to be voting on this within the next 2 weeks, to delay the vote and handle much of the questions that were, or all of the questions that were raised earlier. And don't rush into it because there's going to be lots of problems, as Nick pointed out, from a legal viewpoint, etc. Secondly, I do not understand why we cannot put the generator and the pump station on the triangle location where it originally was and still have the outflow, if necessary, as indicated by everyone, going into the government cut. I know there may be some more horsepower required, but I don't think there's been any study done or any feedback to any of us regarding this. And I would like to get feedback on what is required to have the station at that triangle location. It may be a few $1,000s, $100,000 or so, but it sure would mitigate a lot of trouble for the city and for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Fanning, for your comments, and we'll go to Mr. Roy Coley, if you maybe would like to comment on the triangle location and if it's feasible or not for an outfall on government cut. Mr. Coley?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We did evaluate leaving the pump station at the triangle and running a discharge pipe to government cut, as you mentioned. Please keep in mind that that discharge pipe would be a very large diameter pipe. And what we see when we attempt that are additional conflicts, especially attempting to coming from that triangle and then going in the proximity of the large sewer force main at the intersection there at the end of Washington Street. We see that as a conflict that can be overcome. It is substantially more expensive to run force main that distance. It will use a lot more electricity power. The pump station would have to be bigger at the triangle location to pump that water the greater distance. Obviously, it's more efficient and we can use the smallest size pumps possible the closer the pump station is located to the discharge point, and it would create an even bigger situation for us at the triangle. Our design engineers that we hired, as well as our staff engineers, evaluated that in great detail and come back and did not recommend it, that it just had too many flaws in that potential.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to the next caller. It just says Nick. So Nick, if you may state your full name for us. And
Sure. Nick Tenera. I'm on the Portofino board and the Portofino South Point Master Board. I'll be very brief. I just think if you ask me what is the worst possible location for this in the South Fifth neighborhood, it would be in the park. It's been mentioned by many people on the call, put me on that camp. I thought my neighbor from the Continuum said it well. There's competing objectives and keeping the park beautiful and the fountains. It's gorgeous, and I think we might need some creativity. Maybe it'll cost some more money, but if there's, we should look for a more creative solution and leave the park the beauty that it is. Thank you.
thank you for your comments, sir. We're going to go to the next caller, Robert. Hi, Robert. Can you hear us? Good evening. Hi, good evening, caller. And a request to unmute. So, Robert, I see it's not unmuting. I'm going to go to the next person and we'll come right back to you. So we're going to go to call-in user number 2. You may just state your name for us.
Hi, this is Matthew Goltano. I live at the Courts and I live on First Street. I've listened during the numerous public meetings that have occurred on this project, and I've listened today as to what Roy has said and what Jose has said, and I fully support the streetscape design that puts the pedestrian first. I think the city should proceed with that design. I also think after listening to a little bit of the controversy about the pump station, that the city should consider bifurcating the decision on these two items, the street design as well as the pump location, so that we can at least have some closure and move forward with the design for the street. Appears to be the least controversial of the two, and based upon the SOFMA survey that was conducted a few months ago, there's overwhelming community consensus on a design. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for your comments. So we'll go ahead and move back to Robert. Robert, see if you are able to unmute yourself. Hello.
Do you hear me? I am here.
Hi, yes, good evening.
Hi, Robert Selsom. I am an owner of several apartments in the Yacht Club. And I want to thank the city of Miami Beach for the most thoughtful approach you've taken to this entire project. I think the design of First Street, moving the trees and the green areas to the sides and out of the center of the roadway is a perfect solution. And I think you've done a great job in responding to all of the pressures and both engineering and social and political that have rained down upon you. I do have one question, which is, will the raising of the street bed cause water to run off to the sidewalks, which will remain at their current elevation?
Thank you, Robert, for that question. So we'll turn to Roy, if you may comment.
Thank you for that question. The way we will design that elevated street and the sidewalks will be to where all of the water that falls vertically down on the city right-of-way will be channeled to the underground piping system, and no water from the right-of-way for the 10-year design storm that would actually run to private property. So we will be removing more water out of there now than its current condition. In the future, we'll remove more water than the current condition. So to answer your question, the flooding risk of those properties will be reduced by elevating the road and installing the pumps versus not doing it. Oh, Kevin, he forgot.
Thank you. Yep, there we go. I was muted. We're going to go to a caller ending in 2660. Right before we go to that caller, again, we have about roughly 30 minutes left on this call. So I'm going to, as the caller is asking the question, have that email up in case you have any questions and we are not able to get to you. Hello, caller. Hello, caller, you're live. Okay, so they may have hung up. So we're going to go to Mr. David Poding. Hello, David.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, good evening, yes.
Good evening. Thank you very much. And Kevin, you're doing a great job hosting. I know these Zooms are not easy to host. David Poding, 243 Meridian. I'm just here as a resident, as a neighbor, not as representing any of my clients, South Fifth. Just wondering if the city could, number one, please clarify the proposed location in the park, and if on the slide presentation, if there was a slide with an overhead view showing the proposed location, if they could please go back to that slide. Number two, if the city could confirm if there are alternative locations on city-owned or controlled land that are feasible, what are those locations?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Roy, you should have the ability, if you're able to share that there. I know there was a slide present.
Okay. Are you seeing it now? I have the slide pulled up.
Not yet. If you may click the share screen button.
Well, I thought I did. I'm very sorry. Let me do that. Share. Got you.
There we go. It's coming on.
All right.
Perfect. If you just may.
Roy, go full screen.
Yeah,
okay.
Excellent.
How about that?
There you go. Excellent.
Okay, so what I'm showing you here, this is an overhead view of the pump station and the control panel generator proposal, and these are conceptual. The exact location will be determined in final design. It could move feet one way or the other based on either community preference at that point, or if there's some underground conflict that dictates it needs to move a small amount one way or the other. So the exact location is not identified, and as far as a aerial graphic of potential what it would look like, we do not have that. That would also come later in final design to show options for us to select from on how it would be aesthetically treated. We had some comments in previous meetings about would we consider placing some type of roof structure over it. I will tell you, I hadn't thought about that for this location up until that point, but certainly it's reasonable, and we intend to ask the designer, if the commission approves us moving forward, to give us some options as to whether we want to heavily landscape or whether we want a roof, whether we want to do both, perhaps even put it inside a building. There's a number of options. We build pump stations all the time totally inside of buildings, and it could be that. So based on the feedback we've received to date, we want to ask the designer to give us their options from an architecture standpoint, not from an engineering standpoint, and see what we get that we could choose from. I hope that helps. Kevin, you're still muted.
I'm muted. There we go. Thank you, Roy. And we're going to go to the next caller. It's Damaris Cabrera, but I think this is actually Allison from the Portofino. Hello, is this Allison?
Yeah, hi, Kevin.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Kevin, can you hear me? It's me,
Yes, we can hear
Allison
you.
Herman. Hi. Okay, Allison Herman. I'm the president of Portofino Towers and Portofino South Point Master. I have basically just a few comments and issues I'd like to address. First and foremost, what we would like is, as some of the callers had said, is to bifurcate the vote and to move forward if you need be with the First Street project, but postpone the decision on the pump station. And we believe, as you've heard many callers say today, for two reasons. One is due diligence and the other is due process. Understanding the need for a pump station, I absolutely understand the need for the pump station. And it has been under discussion for 3 years. But the South Point Park location was discarded very early on in the process. I've heard Mr. Coley say it on all 3 calls I've had with him. And it was not brought back to the attention of the community at any time as a relocation or a change. The SAFNA notice, the meeting notice from March 5th, does not mention a change of location. The April 16th survey by SAFNA does not mention the pump station at all. It's simply a vote on option 1 or option 2 of the First Street project. We only found out about it from a resident, and that was only 3 weeks ago. The committee, both the land use committee and the city memorandum, both refer very heavily a weighted decision to SAFNA's position as supporting the pump station in that location. And I think that needs to be re-inspected and separated, because that was a First Street support. That there has been no discussion amongst the community or poll or survey on the pump station new location. That being said, I think there needs to be significant due diligence into the location, investigative studies, engineering,
1 more second.
Organic material, odor, noise, all these have to be investigated, and there needs to be time to do that. And we're simply asking for the time to make sure this is the right decision before destroying the park.
Thank you, Allison, for those comments. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next caller. We have Mary. Hello, Mary. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Hi, good evening. Yes.
Yeah, good evening. So yes, I'm in Portofino Tower. We bought in 2005. It's been lovely. We have, I want to thank Ron and Paula and Nick and Jim and Frank for all their comments, Allison as well, and others that have talked about what a surprise this was for us. We have just gone through significant improvements in our condo in the hopes of, not only enjoying it more, but property values going up. And so I forget who said that there's not going to be impact on property values. Oh, yes, there will. So, the things that concern me the most is the smell. And I think, Allison, you suggested in our last meeting on, I think it was July 2nd, that some drilling go down into the ground to see if that smell of the mangroves is going to come out. Our pool, you know, I love the park. I look down on the park. It's beautiful. Everyone enjoys it. But I'm going to be a little selfish here because our pool, that equipment, we're going to be able to see that over our pool patio. We're going to see it and we're going to hear it. If it's going to run on air conditioning, when is air conditioning not going to run? So, and the smell is going to be key. So I really am asking, please check out the smell. We know it's going to be a visual, I'll say nightmare. The pictures that were taken were not accurate in the way and the closeness to our building that it's.
10 more seconds.
So I just ask that you all consider, since we weren't communicated about this, that there's some time associated with making us sure that this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary, for your comments. And we just wanted to reiterate, we have met with a few buildings in the area, and if we have not met with your building and you would wish to have a meeting with the team, please reach out. I have been sharing the postcard with Lauren Fertel's information on it, so you can go ahead and email her, and she will ensure we can schedule a meeting with you and the property. So we're going to go to the next caller, Tony. Excuse me. Hi, Tony. Can you hear us? Good evening.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. Good evening.
My name is Tony Solomons. I live at the Portofino. And I first of all, I thank you for your presentation. And I also wanted to thank our various neighbors who have eloquently expressed some of the concerns that I certainly share. Without going over some of the same points, I would ask, and I think this is where Allison's remarks were cut off, the various issues that this project may cause, the impacts will be the smell, the sound, the visual impacts, the inconvenience of the construction itself. All of these things need to be studied in advance, not left to the designers. I know Mr. Coley had said, well, we don't exactly know what the smell is going to be. You can go around to other pump stations and see what that smell is like. And that's a very that's a very dismissive and I think irresponsible way to look at this. You're talking about a park which is it's been described as the jewel of South Beach. It's certainly one of the most wonderful things about living in our neighborhood. You know, using the park, looking at the park, having it as part of our neighborhood so positively impacts the overall experience that I just think it would be irresponsible and cavalier to risk affecting that. I understand the need for
10 more seconds.
From an engineering standpoint, but I think that these studies shouldn't be left to the designers. We shouldn't wait until the design is made. I think we should make sure it's all done up front and then coherently presented to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll turn to Roy.
Yes, sir. I'm deeply apologetic to you if you think I was dismissive of your concerns over smell, and please allow me to clarify my comments on smell. You currently have a pump station there, so whatever smells that is naturally occurring in the groundwater that's seeping into that system, you probably have a better idea of it than anyone if you live there now because you currently have it. What I did not want to do was to give you the idea that we're saying that any kind of naturally occurring odors from decomposition underground is not going to be there, because it quite possibly could. Some areas of town we see it pretty substantial. In other areas of the city, we don't see it at all. We have zero smells. And it's impossible to know exactly the impact of all of your smells. And what I had tried to say earlier was, while we've got a good idea of what your neighborhood stormwater smells like, because you've got a pump station there now and it discharges in Government Cut right now directly out in front of the water park. We can ask our designers to further evaluate it. It was not part of the conceptual design of the system that we've done so far, but we could further evaluate it. And if there are identified smells, something that we don't anticipate, ask for how we can mitigate those smells through, there's a whole host of techniques that we could do to build into the system to mitigate something if we identify it. And we would just need to ask our designers to identify them and attempt to mitigate them. I hope that helps a little bit, but certainly didn't mean to dismiss your concern, because it is a valid concern and we appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you, Roy. So we'll go to the next caller, Stephen. I'm going to request to unmute.
Thank you,
Hi,
Mr.
good evening.
Polito. My questions are for Mr. Coley. They're very brief. Last Thursday, in the prior presentation, you made reference to the pump station, both above ground and underground, needing regular maintenance, and the pump station having access for trucks to get to it. How often is that maintenance? How long are they there? I would think that the parking lot is going to be covered with some sort of metal plate. So there's going to need to be a way that that maintenance crew can get access. And I would suspect that that's going to require putting down cones and blocking parking spaces and maybe blocking access either on the eastbound side of the parking lot or on the westbound side. Could you go into more detail, because it hasn't been mentioned this evening?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Two components to your question: the maintenance activity of the pump station and then any activity at the control panel. At the pump station itself, what we have typically seen is the designers have recommended a cleaning frequency of quarterly. And what that means is we would come in on a quarterly basis, and all of those accesses that would be located in the parking lot would be opened, where one of our large vacuum trucks can pull in there and vacuum out any garbage or debris or things that get caught in our pollution control device. Now, what I want to share with you about that is we have learned all areas of town require a different maintenance schedule. We have some areas of town that are very heavily influenced by tourist traffic that, quite frankly, pollute. They throw garbage on the ground, they throw cups and bottles, and it gets in the storm system. And we clean some pump stations much more frequently than quarterly. We go there very often. There's 4 or 5 stations in the city we do that currently. We have a number of stations that we go to quarterly, and when we open them up, we really didn't even need to be there other than to verify. They're just clean and they don't need much, and we're not there long. So it will all depend on the amount of traffic and trash that gets thrown on the ground and gets in the system as to how often we will actually be there. But we will be there minimum quarterly with a big truck to vacuum out and clean any debris, and we may need to be there more often. And what that activity looks like is we would go in and one side of the parking lot, either the entrance or the exit, we would close, we would open the hatches, and we would drive the truck in there and clean it out. Normally that takes about an hour, sometimes 2, depending on how much debris is there. We select a time when it's the least activity and when our truck going in there would be the least intrusive on anyone, and that's the time we would pick. So that's the biggest activity that would take place that you would notice. Now, we do have stormwater operators that visit our control panels almost daily, and they're driving a standard pickup truck size vehicle, and they'll pull in there and park sometime during the day, and they just go and check the panels. They make sure they've not been vandalized, damaged, open them up, check for proper operations and that there's just no issues. That's usually a 10 or 15 minute stop in. We have full-time operators that circulate the city all day long, every work day, checking pump stations just simply to make sure that they're operable and ready to go and no problems in case a rain event happens. So that activity you might not even notice other than you see an individual walk up to the station, open a door, stay there a couple of minutes, make a few notes in a log and leave. That's typically what you would see there on the most common basis. Hope that helps a little.
Thank you. So we'll go to the next caller, Sobe resident. If you may just state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Elias Taravay. I'm a resident in 345 Ocean Drive, Ocean Point condominium. And well, I've been a resident since 1994 of the city of Miami Beach. And what it really concerns me the most is the fact that I've never, it's really hard to see parking spaces go. I mean, we have a big issue with parking, especially in our building, even though we are like 3 blocks away, but everything is always a domino effect of losing parking. So that really worries me because, everybody, they has to come here from other places, and even the people that live here, they have cars. It's just really, really hard to be able to be here without having parking. Another thing that really worries me is the placement, which I haven't heard about it before, the placement of the pumping station in the actual park. I mean, one of the most beautiful things here in our neighborhood is having an open park. It's a gem of Miami Beach. I have so many friends that from other cities nearby, from Coral Gables, from City of Miami. They come here and enjoy the park. Tourists. I go to the park at least 3-4 times a week when I have time. And that openness is really, I think we really need to study that better. I'm an engineer, and I know that the easiest and cheapest solution is not necessarily the best one. So we should study that more before we actually send it over to the designers and just look for that after the fact. That is very, very important. We need to do a lot of studies and make sure that that's not going to be an issue, because when we have a pumping station there's not going to be able, it's done. And we're going to destroy this, we might destroy this beautiful park. And I really would like to see why
10 more seconds.
The initial solution of having it in the triangle and First Street that is owned by the city is not a solution. And try to find a solution for the issues at the end of Washington Avenue in terms of the piping. So also the AC, I think it might be an issue because chances are that 90% of the times the AC is going to be running.
Your time has elapsed.
And that's it. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you for your comments. And we're going to move to Bonnie Meyer. Hello, Bonnie. Good evening.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, good evening, yes.
South Point Tower resident. I want to thank other participants for their comments, and I want to endorse the idea that the simplest solution is often the wrong solution. And to equate this massive pump station with that sewer project, which is completely underground, is really a false equivalency. I just believe it's wrong to rush into a vote on this location, which was the process leading up to it just fraught with error. We were not informed of this last minute change. We believe it's the wrong place. It's just an assault to our eyes, it's the smell, the sights, the sound. It's the wrong place for it. I can imagine that it was difficult to get easements from condos, for example, let's just pick one, maybe perhaps Apogee. But now I think even the residents of Apogee would be saying, I'd rather have an easement that is completely invisible to us once the access is given, similar to that sewer project. Then many of their residents are also going to be looking at this horrid place for the pump station. So I think it's urgent to consider the other options. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. So we're going to move to the next. We have a few more minutes, and I want to try to get through as many people as we can. So next up is Mr. Alan Fishman. Mr. Fishman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, good evening. Yes.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm on the board of directors for the Continuum South Tower, and I'm the president. There's a few points that I wanted to bring out that I've been taking notes over the last 3 meetings that I have attended on behalf of my association. First of all, what hasn't been discussed is the lousy outreach that the city has in fact done, whereby you only reached out to a few people. The city has thousands of registered emails, which they can send out a survey, which is professionally prepared to all the residents and give everyone an equal chance to respond instead of a select few people that, in this case, responded. Number two, it was just glossed over too quickly and not even mentioned all night by Mr. Coley, that garbage trucks will be coming into the park on a regular basis. I think the exact timing and how long it takes needs to be disclosed to the residents and the city commission. It will also increase the smell because then you're dumping out the garbage into the trucks. There's always smell associated with that. So that needs to be explored. We need to have testing done instead of talked about. What's not really talked about tonight, again, is decaying mangroves is what causes the smell. We need studies done and results shared with the community before any decision is made. This park of ours is a world-class park, as you've heard, and putting in a 12 to 16-foot cooling station is going to be an ugly blight for everyone to see. We need to have noise monitoring done in advance through computer models so we know exactly what the noise is going to be instead of just guessing and doing light slide-by-hand answers for that. We also need to address the fact that all the city staff approved option 1, which was not the loss of 24 spaces, and then all of a sudden, like a flip of the switch, the whole city staff went in and changed their mind because someone must have asked them to. So I'm against giving up
10 more seconds.
Spaces, because when you give them up, you never get them back. And finally, this is a major event that's going to take 3 years and cost millions of dollars. There's no reason why it can't be slowed down to take the time to evaluate it properly instead of rushing it down the citizens of the South Point area. And finally, you already acknowledged that South Point 5 has minimal flooding, yet we're getting stuck with the pump stations for the 2nd and 3rd Street area instead of putting it up there where the flooding is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for your comments, Mr. Fishman. We are going to move to the next caller. I think this may actually be our last caller just due to time, ending in 3402. Hello, caller, you're live.
Yes, hi, I'm here. My name is Joe Tyner. I own the Allstate Agency on Miami Beach, 141 Alton. It's the courts. I live there. I used to live there for 20 years. I'm not a Portofino. Totally against option 2, which only they discussed maybe 3 months ago to do this option. Obviously, minority people just said, let's do an option 2. Ridiculous. We would lose parking spots for my clients. My clients walk around and they can't find a parking spot. And Betty from the pharmacy, same thing. And the other people from, they can't find parking spots. So that's the first issue. Terrible. And option 1 was always there for 3 years, and then all of a sudden option 2 came along, and then it was discussed. So just terrible. Second, the pump. I was hearing, can't they put the pump in Washington? They said, oh, it will remove the small pump in Washington. Make the Washington pump bigger, or don't put it here. I'm against the pump on South Point Drive, and I'm on South Point Park, and that's basically it. I mean, I'm just, that's it. I come my piece.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments, sir. So we still have time for a few, I think one more caller, Mr. Andres. Hello, Andres, you are unmuted. Hi, Andres, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Good evening.
Oh, yes, thank you. Andres Echenique here, resident of South Point, Portofino Towers, since 97. I echo much of the negative sentiment about the project here on the call. I'm not going to get into details. But additionally, I mean, what about the businesses? Are you guys addressing the businesses in a different forum and getting their input? So I'll give you an example. Smith & Walensky is a jewel in the park there, and that is just an incredible quality of life that we have there. And I was there at lunch today. I asked them about that. Nobody seemed to be aware of this, including the upper manager there, Norman Torres. And the question is, are you guys talking to the businesses? Have you gotten their input as well? This is going to kill Smith and Wolenski, literally. I mean, forget Smith and Wolenski. Say bye-bye to Smith and Wolenski, and I don't know what else to say, guys. And to the question that there's no negative impact on our real estate values, seriously, guys, I appreciate some serious thought going into this. And the question is, again, are the businesses being addressed? Are Smith and Wolenski and all the other little restaurants aware of this?
Thank you, sir. So yes, to address your comment specifically for Smith & Wolenski, we did make contact with them, and I believe they had management on this call today. We've also extended an invitation to meet with them. It may be after it's going to be after this meeting, and that invitation still stands. And as for the other businesses along First Street and Washington Avenue, we have met with some of them in the past. Recently, we've met with the ones on Washington Avenue. So there has been communication and outreach to those businesses within the area. We're going to go to the next caller, John. So John, you're actually going to be our last caller. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me? This is John LaSalandra from the South Tower Continuum. I also sit on the South Tower Master Association. I got to tell you, I'm not as eloquent as my other neighbors around here. I'm going to be a little bit more bombastic about it. This process and project stinks. First of all, not listening to all the viewers and callers will be a disservice to our community. An email that you suggested is not the same as being heard tonight. So I urge you to stay on until everyone is heard, because this is a very important issue, and just sending an email does not work. I'm just hearing about this for the first time, so I'm a little worked up about it. Tonight, Roy mentioned he's not on the negotiating committee for the 99-year marina lease. My comment to that is you have the wrong negotiators in place. Have the commissioners look into new negotiators. My question is, why would you turn and take our crown jewel park and turn it into a smelly cesspool park? Mr. Roy Coley made a comment also that we would know better that there's an odor because we have a lot of pumps around us. And let me tell you, and let me be the first on the record to say that, yes, I've been around many of those pump stations around, especially one by the Fresh Market. And let me tell you, I guarantee you, the odor stinks. The stench is horrific. Why would we do that? So my question to Mr. Roy is there some type of study we can do about the smell in itself? And I urge you to please stay on and take more calls. It's that important. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, sir. I'm happy to clarify some about the smell concern. When I mentioned that you would know in your neighborhood, I was speaking only for the fact of the pump station located in your neighborhood. Comparing your neighborhood to any other neighborhood would be less than accurate because these smells are all coming from naturally occurring decomposition below the surface of the ground. Some neighborhoods have substantial amounts, some have very little. The best way to assume what your area might have is what the smell is there currently at the pump station that exists. The only thing that we can do to design for that is ask our designers to identify any sources of smell in the area that we don't know about that might get accessed. But these are naturally occurring smells. The pump stations do not produce them. The stormwater systems do collect them if there is leakage into the stormwater system. What we have already proposed in your neighborhood is that all of the underground pipes be gasketed and be watertight, which is not the standard for stormwater. Often stormwater systems are piped with concrete pipes butted together because they weren't concerned about being totally watertight and airtight, if you will. We're proposing a system that is to reduce the likelihood of any seepage into the system from groundwater that might have smells. So that would make your system less likely to have smells. But there again, if there are naturally occurring decomposition going on, there might be some, and we can attempt to identify them and mitigate them. But just trying to be completely transparent, it would not be accurate for any